Hey, Jaxon here. Today we're going to be talking about, I can't take it anymore, I gotta talk about Sonic again. Sonic the Hedgehog has always been a pretty divisive game series. Yada yada yada, blah blah blah. You've already seen me go over this whole spiel in my video on Sonic Mania, which if you haven't watched it, you probably should check it out, maybe even subscribe. One thing I briefly touched upon in that video is how the consensus around a Sonic game in the fanbase can change over time. A game that was positively received by the community when it first came out can become more divisive as the years go on, or a game that was bashed by the fanbase when it first comes out can have a more positive reception down the line. I touched upon the former phenomenon in that video, discussing how there were people in the Sonic community turning on Sonic Mania due to it having a lack of originality. And today, I wanted to discuss a similar phenomenon with Sonic 1. You see, a decent amount of people over the years have come out to say that they just don't really enjoy the original Sonic the Hedgehog, with them saying it's mediocre or sometimes even bad. Even the people that do like Sonic 1 still admit that it's the weakest of the original games on Genesis and that it's just okay by modern standards, especially compared to its sequels. However, I've never really gotten these takes on the game. I definitely agree with the opinion that it is the second weakest of the classic Sonic games on Genesis, but I don't think it's just okay, mediocre, or bad. So today, I'm going to go over the original Sonic the Hedgehog, and why I think it's still a great game. Sonic 1 has a very simple story, at least compared to later entries in the series. We follow two characters, Sonic the Hedgehog and Dr. Robotnik. Robotnik wants world domination and heads to South Island to start his conquest, looking for the 6 Chaos Emeralds, magical gems with unlimited power. In order to find them quickly, he takes the local wildlife and puts them into his machines as a power source. Sonic, a resident of South Island, finds out what Robotnik is doing and decides to put a stop to it, meaning it's time to start the game with Green Hill Zone. A lot of people call this zone the peak of Sonic 1. Yeah, I agree. This stage is so fun, whether you're just casually going along it or you're trying to get the fastest time. The more skilled you are at the game, the faster you go, and as a result, you're able to get some crazy low times on these stages. Look Ma, 30 seconds. This is definitely Sonic 1 at its peak. It is easy to see why Sega keeps putting it in every single Sonic game now. The zone ends in Act 3 with the first boss fight against Robotnik. It's a complete joke. It only takes 8 hits to defeat him, and you could get in 4 to 5 before it even starts. I only got hit during this fight because my emulator lagged for whatever reason. It was lag, I swear. Defeat him and we're on to Marble Zone, which people commonly think is the second worst zone in the game, mostly for how it slows down the pace. What was once a fast-paced 2D platformer is now a slow waiting game. I think this is kinda over-exaggerated. There are some sections of the level that are just a waiting game and the overall zone is slower, but it isn't bad at all. The part that infuriated me the most wasn't even the slower pace, it was these annoying fireballs. The next fight is a step up, still super easy to defeat, but a step up. Robotnik launches these fireballs out of his Eggmobile, jump to the other platform to avoid him, and hit him if you had the chance. Next is Spring Yard Zone, which you don't see people talk about nearly as much as the other zones in the game, and it's a shame too. I thought this was much better than Marble Zone. There are these annoying platforms here and these spike balls there, but it's overall much faster paced than Marble Zone. Not as fast as Green Hill, but still fast enough to where it's enjoyable. This was also the zone where I got all 6 Chaos Emeralds. You get them by entering the special stage, which you access by jumping into this big ol' ring, which you unlock by having at least 50 rings at the end of Acts 1 or 2. In the special stage, we enter this rotating maze thing, and have to get the emerald at the end, but we're stuck in our ball form while we do it too. These special stages aren't really great. I heard that they were pretty impressive for the Genesis at the time, and I guess that's neat, but the rotating maze makes this a lot harder than it needs to be. Since there's only 6 emeralds in this game instead of the usual 7, you don't get supersonic for collecting all of them, just the good ending. The boss fight in this zone is actually somewhat challenging. Robotnik will hover above the player before launching a spike out of his little mobile, which we need to dodge, yet still manage to hit him. And we have to do it fast because we're running out of ground, as you can see. Still pretty easy, but you're far more likely to die during this fight than the first 2. Well, Sonic 1's looking pretty solid so far. I wonder what's up next. Next up is a Labyrinth Zone, what many people consider to be the worst stage in the game and one of the worst in Sonic history. It's alright. I see a lot of people say it's too slow and easy to die in. Maybe if you're like 5. I don't know, man. It might just be me. I've never hated water levels in Sonic as much as a lot of other people do. The only time I really think that Labyrinth Zone lives up to its reputation is the boss fight. Unlike all of the other boss fights in the game, we have to chase Robotnik up here, but there's some annoying spikes and fireballs that hurt us. Wait, fireballs underwater? The water also rises about halfway through, so it's easy to drown, and it makes it even slower and harder to just finish this boss. And if you die, there aren't any rings on your way to the boss fight, so you only have this one shield, so you can only take one hit or you're dead. Overall, not very good. Moving on. Next up is Starlight Zone, and I think it's kinda neat. It's just a relaxing stage to wind down to after Labyrinth and before Scrap Brain. Its music is relaxing, one of the best tracks in the game, and it's pretty fast-paced too, which makes it really fun. The only annoying part of the stage is waiting for these bomb guys to blow up. I didn't really like them. The boss fight is also really fun, and it feels like an actual fight. Robotnik's too high up to be hit normally, so you have to use these spike balls that you have to launch via this seesaw to either hit him or launch yourself up to hit him. Pretty kino. Next is the 6th zone, Scrap Brain Zone, which is a factory serving as Robotnik's base of operations. It has its issues. Some of the traps the player encounters can be a bit unfair, especially if you fall into the lower parts of the stage, but Scrap Brain is an overall great way to finish the game. However, after completing Act 2, Sonic runs into Robotnik, who is, as you can see, protected by this laser wall. He pushes a button, and Sonic falls into... No. It can't be! Don't let the name fool you. This isn't Act 3 of Scrap Brain Zone. This is Labyrinth Zone's revenge. Everything that people have hated about Labyrinth Zone is multiplied here. It's almost impossible to complete without taking this shortcut at the beginning. Seriously, what happened? Did they just run out of dev time? I make it up, and it's time for the 7th and final zone. Final Zone. Which is just the final boss fight. It's really easy. Robotnik is in one of these tubes. Hit him if you have the chance while avoiding being crushed, and avoid these lasers. You have no rings, which can make it a little more challenging, but you can also just stand to the right and you'll be safe for majority of the fight. I land enough hits, get in an extra one for good measure, and Robotnik is defeated. Sonic returns to Green Hill with all of his friends saved, and he teleports the Chaos Emeralds back to where they came from, creating new life in the process. And that's Sonic 1. I can confirm it is a game. A great one at that. I wouldn't recommend it to any newcomers unless you're really interested in seeing where it all began. There are far better games that I'd recommend as your first Sonic game. I'm not going to claim that it's better than its sequels or anything crazy, but I still think it's a lot better than some give it credit for. There's a reason why this game was so acclaimed back when it first came out. There had never been anything like it before, and it helped start one of the biggest video game franchises of all time. And while its sequels may have done a better job, and while its sequels may have done a better job, that doesn't make the original Sonic the Hedgehog any less special. You know, I think this is the first review I've made that doesn't end with me saying a joke. Not really good at ending videos, so, think I'm just gonna